public service from Portland State University. Have you ever climbed a mountain and found yourself sort of mired in all the details of maps and the logistics and all of the things that you could sort of be analyzing that sort of slowed you down? Or did you think about what it would be like to go to the top and what really motivates you to climb the mountain and the view, and that step by step you would be looking out onto some beautiful vista? I find in public service that it's not about kind of the minutia and the logistics and what a lot of people think, and sort of being buried in paperwork and permitting and all of those types of things that make people go into public service. It's really thinking about climbing that mountain and looking back at what you've done for others. And one of the best examples of that for me in my work in Vietnam has been Sun Cha Peninsula, and what government officials have done in listening to the public and their cries and poems and songs and the educational programs that the community has created to really get public servants involved in the conservation of the Duke longer. And so that's why I have these monkeys in my background. I'm showing them as kind of the driver for this way that this community has come together. And so when I think about us consulting and the services that we provide to public leaders, I think we really need to think about that part of inspiration that's so important for our leaders that are taking on all that paperwork and all that technical knowledge that it takes to have influence and to kind of climb that mountain as a public servant. And so I also included this quote from Douglas Adams in The Hitchhiker's Guide, that to really give yourself in service, you must be giving something that's not bought by money. That's not how we measure our worth and what we give to others, that it's really to give with sincerity and integrity. And so I just wanted to bring that to the policy context in which we analyze what motivates public servants, and that we can embody that sincerity and integrity and that sense of aspiration to kind of get people out of the mindset of a mountain of paperwork and think about the real mountains that are at the heart of our communities that we're all summiting together, and that it's a collective movement. So with that, I wanted to go over my presentation. First, I wanted to gather some more information from you all, get a little bit of input on what demand assessments have looked like for you in your public service consulting. Then go over a technical review of sort of a linear path to the trainings assessment, sort of someone who's more looking at the map, has got a guide, is going to take this certain way to summit that mountain. And then kind of a relational and research-based approach that the Hatfield School of Government and Portland State University has taken to consulting. And maybe where we've slipped up, but maybe where we've also found some efficiencies and how we've gotten paid for different ways in which we've traversed. And then the transferability of it all. So in terms of inputs, I wanted to know sort of how have you assessed market demand in your work? What's working, what's not when it comes to government officials? What organizational assets do each of your organizations have uniquely? And then what can help each other stand out? So what's the same and what's different from your organizations and how you approach this work? And then what does your network look like? And so those are pretty big questions. I'm going to give a quick example from my work and then have someone from SOG and SVF speak up. So I wanted to share somewhere where we kind of fell down or lost some ground in our market demand assessments. And so the university was looking at diversifying their revenue streams, and they wanted someone in the university. They did a call to all departments to champion online certificate programs. And so our center went after a competitive bid and won the money from the university to develop this program. So we worked with the Office of Academic Innovation, and we moved all our training curriculum into this sort of format where we would do live scenarios with students, and we would recruit in a whole different way, and we would package everything to what the university thought would really be a marketable program. Unfortunately, what we found is that the students that were attracted to it were already at PSU, so we were just moving students into this shorter term certificate program, which was really not the goal. And then we weren't reaching that broader audience, which we really thought online would become a platform for. And so we ran the program for about 3 years. We just about broke even every year on enrollment. We probably had 5 to 10 students go through it, and then we had to take an assessment and figure out what wasn't working. And when we talked to a lot of clients that have been sort of repeat customers, they just said that they wanted something that wasn't through the university, that you didn't have to pay for the credits and go through all the enrollment procedures, but it would be more of like a practicum. And so we kind of stopped doing that program and learned how important it is to really understand things through your target audience before you design a program. You put it out to market. So I want to hear a little bit of lessons learned from you, either more about what's working or what you'd like, what areas you'd like to improve in. All right. Now I'm going to go through kind of the linear flow of a training needs assessment. This is a synthesis of best practices from the US and international institutions. And I'm going to give a quick overlay of a recent assessment that I've done and that we've gotten paid for it. So it's something else to mention, that as an academic institution, we sort of have the flexibility that sometimes our assessments, where we're trying to figure out what consulting services work, we actually get paid for as research. So it kind of depends on your credentials, but that's something that we leverage. So these are a few different tools that you can use when you're running an analysis on the demand for your services. These we're all familiar with in our work on SPC. We use the Provincial Competitive Index to build into our pre-survey how we design our training courses. We use stakeholder mapping to understand conceptual understanding versus skill-based understanding and kind of the attitudes around that. We have a survey synthesis method and looking at the application of our skills. We look also at competencies and have people weigh in on whether they are aware of these certain issues that they should be in their role and in their job, if they have a strong knowledge or if they have proficiency where they could actually be teaching the class that we're proposing. And then here's an example of a report. So kind of that linear look, what are the kind of the tools that you use to gauge where folks are at, their application, what sort of qualitative, what sort of quantitative in their functions as government officials, and where can you play a role in supporting improvements. And then here's an example of a report. And again, we were paid for this report as another revenue source because it was not only an academic exercise, we had high-level faculty working on some of this work, but also I worked on it as an author practitioner in order to document work that we had done previously. So we actually got paid by a foundation to share a success story. So we did this all through qualitative interviews, and then we documented how we've mentored this institution in a rural community so that other rural communities could use this as a case study on how they can facilitate public policy discussions. So there's quite a few layers there, but it's just another example of how we've diversified our consulting services, at what different stages of consulting we get paid for. And then even documenting your best practices can have value. And so I think in approaching consulting as a suite of services. This is just another example that not only is it in your training needs assessment, but it's also something that is a final product and deliverable. So I'm going to stop there, and then we're going to go into the Hatfield School of Government approaches that I hope you'll find transferable. But I'm just going to give a few case studies. I'm going to have Dr. Marcus Engel give a few case studies, and then we can kind of talk about what else you'd like to know about the role that we play in public policy and how that translates to consulting work in serving government officials. So thank you very much.